When I'm recording this video, we are in the midst of a lackluster Disney Plus show called The Acolyte. In fact, the summer of 2024, we are being inundated with a ton of bad movies. You see, the box office is actually suffering one of its worst summers so far, and we are also unfortunately being inundated with a bunch of bad TV shows or web shows. I don't know about you, but it feels like nobody knows how to write, or that the people who are allowed to get their stuff made are so new to writing that they have not a good understanding of the craft. Now, personally, I know my writing is not the best, but then again, I haven't been handed a $200 million show to write for, but I digress. In this time of such underwhelming movies, TV programs, and other online content, you're probably wondering, what have we lost? Well, looking at it from a screenwriting or a writer's perspective, I think we've lost a sense of themes in our movies. Pointing back to the summer of 2024, The Acolyte again, can we easily pick out what the theme of the Disney Plus series is trying to get at? Is it the tried and true good versus evil? Now, believe it or not, Disney Star Wars has been pushing itself more towards the ambiguous nature of the conflict between the Empire and the Rebels, or the New Republic, or whatever two sides there are right now. So what they say right now is there's no good or evil. There's just sides. Now, this might sound really edgy at first, but to be honest, it creates often boring storylines because the audience doesn't know who to root for. It doesn't work well in a universe where the theme for the majority of the films and other media was good versus evil. This is one of the reasons that I think The Acolyte is failing. They're not engaging with the theme of good versus evil. So what are we as screenwriters and writers supposed to do? I think it's to learn how to use theme to make our stories and scripts more powerful and engaging. In order to do that today, let's take a look at a movie that got the themes right. We're going to be looking at the film Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the King, directed by Peter Jackson and originally written by J.R.R. Tolkien. Before we dive into the film, I think it's important that we are all working with the same definition of what a theme is. The main definition for a theme is the subject of a talk, a piece of writing, personal thoughts, or exhibition of topic. The theme of the sermon was reverence. Now, personally, I think for our discussion for today, I like the second main definition, which is an idea that recurs or pervades a work of art or literature. Again, we're looking for an idea that pervades the story, or the way I think about it is it's an idea which is so encapsulated in the story it's hard to miss. Now, we don't beat our audiences over the head with it, but it's also something so enmeshed in our story that our audience can't help but pick it up, even if it's just subconsciously. In good pieces of literature, there are many different themes that can come out of it, and The Lord of the Rings is no different. So for our conversation today, I'd like to talk about only one theme, and see how it is interspersed throughout the whole story. And that theme is not going to be good versus evil, but something a little bit more scarier and thought-provoking: death. So you might be asking, how did I know that was a theme of The Lord of the Rings? Well, spoiler alert, Tolkien actually wrote about it in one of his letters, which was labeled Letter 186, where he said this: "The real theme for me is death and immortality, the mystery of love of the world in the hearts of a race doomed to leave, and similarly lose it, the anguish in the hearts in the race doomed not to leave it until its whole evil-aroused story is complete." However, if you watch the film or read the book carefully, there are a lot of instances of different ideas about death. Also, I think on a subconscious level, most people can sense that this would be a theme based on the characters and the events that happen in the story. Now that we've settled on a theme for discussion, you might be wondering, as a beginning writer, how do we begin to think of a theme? For Tolkien, he picked this theme because during his life he was inundated by death. He lost both of his parents by the age of 12, and not too many years later he served in World War I. The trench warfare was brutal, and he lost a lot of his friends in the fighting. So it makes sense that something that had affected his life from an early age would be a theme that he'd explore in his writings. So what about yourself? What has shaped you? What things or thing has had a hand in making you, you? This might be a theme to explore. Now, mind you, it might not be easy, but it would really ramp up your ability to tell a compelling story. There are a lot of different references to this theme of death, but I want to share with you just 3 for today. 3 that I think will help you in your own writing. The first is that the antagonist and the protagonist both explore the theme. This starts right at the beginning of the film. Sauron and his minions are about to bring death to Middle-earth. Our first images of Mount Doom are what? Black and dark. Looks like a haunted cemetery, right? How about Sauron? He's in the volcano where there is fire. Sort of looks like hell, right? We have these images of death. Look at the forces that oppose them. They are dressed in what? Silver and gold, reminding a person of angels. Though interesting enough, they are covered with dirt and grime to remind us they are good, but they are not perfect. In the first scene, it was through the death of the King of Men that his son was able to defeat Sauron. We are not more than 10 minutes in, and we have already been encompassed in this theme of death. Later in the movie, we are introduced to the Black Riders. Look at the costume design. What or who do they remind you of? The Grim Reaper, right? And even more so, they're looking for a person just like the Grim Reaper does. Frodo and his friends. Again, we see this theme of death coming up, that the antagonist bad guys are the ones embodying sort of this negative view of death. The death that is here to carry you away from this life. A little later in the movie, after Frodo is saved from the Black Riders by Arwen, one of my favorite scenes, which I could probably do a whole video on the symbolism of that scene, we see Frodo waking up. Look at the colors. White. He is greeted by his friend Gandalf. Look again at the coloring of the scene. It is very light and airy, as if we were in heaven. As if Frodo died, yet he is safe with his friends. In later movies, we've even seen Gandalf go from gray robes to white robes, even more cementing this understanding that Gandalf is this agent from heaven, aka the good death. So the lesson we can take from understanding this part of the theme of death is that we need to tie not just our hero or heroine to the theme, but to make the theme really resound, we need to tie in the antagonist as well, or the villain. To make it even more punchy, we need to make the antagonist show the opposite of the theme. In this case, Sauron and his minions represent all the forces of hell and the negative aspect of death. The second instance of this theme of death I would like to explore occurs when the Fellowship is sitting in the caves of Moria, waiting until Gandalf can figure out which way to go. This particular scene I still actually get a little choked up about because of when this film was released. It was December 2001, just a couple of months after 9/11. Yes, I am that old. As a country, I think a lot of us were processing the events on that hard day. I think a lot of us felt just like Frodo. We felt lost. We felt like there was nothing we could do. And the line that Gandalf gives us felt more like he was talking to me and where I was than actually talking to Frodo.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
What to do with the time that has been given to us. This particular statement does a good job of getting at the heart of death. It's even more powerful because the characters are dealing with this question. How do I deal with death? How do I deal with my death? How do I deal with my companion's death? Is it worth it? Gandalf's answer is one that brings hope.
There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides the will of evil. Bilbo was meant to find the ring.
Jackson also leans to this message of hope from the music that is played. It's very peaceful and uplifting to the way that Gandalf is framed in the scene. So as a writer, how can your characters struggle with the theme that everybody sort of asks about? In this particular case, Tolkien is taking the certainty of death and all the unpleasantness that comes with it and frames it in a way that shows that death doesn't define your life, but instead, how you lived it. This is why we have to live and live well. What can you do that takes your theme and makes it approachable for your audience? The third thing I'd like to explore about death in The Lord of the Rings takes place at Boromir's death. I don't know about you, but I agree with a comment I saw in a YouTube video for this by I Steal Fires, who writes, and I quote, "Christ, already started crying as I would have followed you, my brother. But then, be at peace, son of Gondor." Full on ugly crying, such a powerful scene. In a film that's one of its central themes is death, it makes sense that we as an audience are brought nice and close to death. Note Disney Star Wars, this is not a red shirt sort of death, like the Acolyte, a character that we as an audience gets to know, and more importantly, like or at least understand. We get to see both sides of this theme in this particular scene. The grossness of death. Boromir has several arrows sticking out of him as well as blood at the corner of his mouth. We see the grief in saying goodbye to someone who has been our friend as well as the powerlessness, knowing that there is nothing we can do. On the converse side, we see that the gentleness that Aragorn has for Boromir, his gentle touch when his friend departs, as well as his kind words.
Be at peace, son of Gondor.
Death is ugly, and at the same time, beautiful. To answer I Steal Fries' sort of implied question, why does this scene hit us so hard? Because I think All of us have felt this sometime. We've had a friend or a family member in this situation. They are dying, and we can't do anything for them. We are very much there in Aragorn's shoes as we look down at Boromir and replace that with the person that we love. That's why this scene is so powerful. This is the genius that Jackson and Tolkien do with this theme. They make us relive our own experience with this direct theme. You can't just put a theme out there and not take it on full force. If you do this as a writer, then people are going to simply walk away from your film feeling that there should have been a little bit more. Also, look where they do this as well. They have us take on this full force of the theme at the end of the film, when we have been stewing with the theme, baked in the theme, and inundated with the theme. If you want to have this visceral type of reaction in your movie, engage them head on at the end. Make it part of your climax, and you will see people fall in love with your story, or at the very least, be very engaged with it. Now, these are ways to engage your theme in a more meaningful process, which should make your story 1,000 times better. Let's take a moment and look at it from a practical standpoint. How do we do this in our own writing? Since I'm a screenwriting software channel mainly, let us take a look at the software that I've recently been introduced to Script Studio. No, this is not a sponsored video. I simply bring them up because they have a feature that is designed to help you figure out how a theme or some other piece of idea is progressing in your screenplay. It seems a little gimmicky at first, but I think it goes a long way to help you see, yes, I have this part of the theme here. Or maybe I need to think about how I would need to bring it up there. Now, Script Studio has a dedicated feature for this, but you could do this in any other screenwriting software that has a research feature like Fade-In or Scrivener. Heck, you could just even open a Word or Google Doc. The important thing is to look at each scene and ask yourself, how am I using the scene here? Or am I using the theme here? Or how is the theme tracing in this part of the story? Now, how will you add theme to your next project? Let me know what other elements would you like a video essay about. As always, live well and write well.